Richard Henry Malden was an Anglican churchman, biblical scholar, and writer. He was born in 1879 in Paddington, the son of Charles Edward Malden and Sarah Fanny Main. He attended King's College in Eton. In 1904 he was ordained a deacon and a priest in 1905. Between 1904 and 1950 he held a variety of posts in the church, such as Principal of Leeds Clergy School, examining chaplain to the Bishop of Norwich, chaplain to the King, and Dean of Wells. In 1918 he married Ethelred Theodora Norton. He died in 1951 in Tunbridge Wells. He was a friend of M.R. James for over 30 years, and in 1943 he published 9 Ghosts, written between 1909 and 1942. These stories are meant to continue the tradition of the Jamesian antiquarian ghost story. Let us examine the stories first, before pointing out why they fail to do so. A collector's company has a man sleep in a house, where he sees his host dancing about demonically outside with a bunch of hooded people at night. But his host dies soon after he leaves, so nothing really happens. The dining room fireplace concerns a painting of a man sitting in an unnatural position in his chair, hung up in a dining room. When people stay in the room longer, a big burly something or other comes up from the chimney before scuttling back up it. When taking the painting down, they find a notebook of some possibly satanic club and a note saying it was disbanded, but that's about it. Stivinghoe Bank has a man set out to sketch a ruined church, and after seeing a ghost along the way, finds a box containing a monkey buried in a monk's robe, and reasons this was the imp that belonged to the chaplain accused of devilry, who vacated the scene before he could be confronted by the bishop. In the Sundial, a man moves into a rented house, but he keeps being pursued by a man with a deformed, unnaturally long neck, who chases him about the place to get rid of him. But he apparently never could have actually harmed the man for real, and he is dealt with when the stump under which he was buried as a suicide is removed. Between sunset and moonrise concerns Mrs. Vries, an old lady living in the last cottage in the parish, and how one night a mass of ghostly figures march towards her house, slowly fusing into one man, and then bring about her death. In the blank leaves, the ghost of a man who had his hand cut off to be turned into a hand of glory pursues the people of a small parish until they dig his hand up. This is about as close to Jamesian ghost imagery as Malden gets. The 13th tree concerns a family curse and seeing the drowning of a boy by a dead witch. The coxswain of the lifeboat is a muddled story of a vicious lifeboat captain and how even the sea didn't want him after death. And the priest's brass concerns a hidden brass plate, a priest accused of diabolism, and a phantom bull that makes the narrator fall off his bike. The unnamed narrator has a habit of having to explain how he got his hands on whichever story he is relating to his readers, but since this is not an actual character, it would have been efficient to dispense with a framework. Also, names and places of characters are noted to be changed, and the reader is constantly challenged by Malden to discover the location if they are clever enough. The writing also relies too heavily on the narrator arriving on the scene and then dreaming about what happened. Despite having the requisite notebooks buried beneath old tree stumps, confessions hidden within walls, and the very often relied upon cache of documents found in the church library or parish registry, Malden seems to think he must have his narrator witness the events even if they happened hundreds of years ago. Yet despite this, Malden has a tendency to sometimes not tell us anything, and while vagueness in a ghost story may work effectively, it has to be used in moderation. Malden's chief fault is a rather tedious repetition. Almost all stories concern people going to churches in faraway corners of Britain, to in some capacity consult local records or sketch the church in question. And while this may be fertile ground for a ghost story of the M.R. James model, Malden seemed to forget James wrote others that were not focused entirely on visiting old churches.